She disappeared from the backyard on an ordinary afternoon. No traces, no explanations. For 20 years, I lived as if a part of my body had been ripped off. But then, an envelope appeared under my door, and in it, a sentence that only she could have written. What happened next was not just a reunion. It was a cruel revelation, a buried story, and a new loss that forced me to face the ghosts of the past once again. This story is about love, pain, and secrets between sisters, but mainly about how far a mother will go to protect the ones she loves, even if she has to choose between the past and the future. Watch until the end, because the final truth is only revealed when the door closes. I never knew exactly when I lost my daughter. It wasn't like in the movies, where time freezes and a dramatic soundtrack announces that something terrible has happened. It was subtle, quiet, one of those ordinary days that no one would expect to turn into the beginning of the end. She was only 9 years old. It was a muggy summer afternoon, and I had promised her that we would make pancakes together after her bath. I remember leaving her in the backyard playing with the hose, laughing, her wet hair stuck to her face. I went inside to get her clean clothes. When I came back, the sound of the water was still running. The hose was lying on the ground, but she was no longer there. At that moment, my heart didn't race. It just slowed. Something went cold inside me, not with immediate fear, but with denial. I searched the entire house. I called her name 10 times, 20 times. I screamed, and then panic. The neighbors came out and we started searching. Then came the police, the posters, the questions, the investigations. Nothing. No leads, no reliable testimony, no security camera footage, just a black hole in time. She was gone as if she'd never existed. I lived 20 years trapped in that same day. Time did move on, yes. My hair darkened and then turned white. My hands became thinner, my skin more fragile. I moved house. I moved city. But I never managed to change from the inside. Every time someone asked me if I had children, my throat would close up. I would say, I had a daughter, in the past tense. It was easier than explaining. Over time, people stopped asking, including my family, including myself. I convinced myself that it was better to leave it behind, that I needed to move on, that I was alive and deserved a new life. But the truth is that I was just existing. I didn't sleep. I just closed my eyes. I didn't smile. I just moved my mouth. I got used to living as if I were waiting for something that would never come again, until an envelope arrived. It was a normal Tuesday. I had just come back from the bakery. I was still holding the bag of warm bread when I saw the envelope under the door. There was no return address, just my name, handwritten. That handwriting. It looked so much like the one I taught Clara when she wrote birthday notes. My heart leapt in my chest, and for a moment, I was afraid to open it. The paper was a little crumpled. It smelled like it had been stored, like it was old. Inside, there was just one sheet of paper with 2 sentences. Do you still remember the smell of lavender in the backyard? I never forgot it. Signed, C. The ground seemed to shift beneath my feet. Lavender. Clara loved lavender. It was the scent of the soap she used. It was the scent she associated with happiness. And see Clara, the only person who called me Mommy, with a crooked smile, holding up the edges of her blouse when she was embarrassed. Was this real? Was someone playing a joke on me? Or was it possible? I stood there paralyzed for hours. I pressed the letter to my chest and sat on the kitchen floor. I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope, fear, and hope. Because when someone disappears for 20 years, you imagine 1,000 things. But when they come back, your mind explodes. What kind of life did she have? Did she blame me? Did she remember me with affection or with hatred? Was it really her? The next day, another envelope. And the day after that, another one. All discreet, all left without me seeing who was in it. All with short phrases that only the 2 of us would know. Remember the Blue Whale song you used to sing me to sleep? I still have the heart-shaped pebble I found on the beach with you. And then, can I see you? I'm here. The address. A park bench in the Old Town Center. Wednesday. Noon. I spent 2 days without sleeping. I thought of 1,000 ways to deal with it. 1,000 ways to deal with her. I wrote and tore up letters. I chose clothes and changed them dozens of times. I repeated to myself, don't create expectations. Don't create hopes. But deep down, a part of me screamed that it was her. That my daughter was alive. That day, I arrived early. I sat on the indicated bench. I looked around, as if waiting for a miracle to materialize in flesh and blood. People passed by. Some slowed down when they saw my anxious expression. Others just kept going. And then, I saw it. She stopped on the opposite sidewalk. Her hair was tied up in a simple bun. Her eyes were mine, and her posture, the same as when she was a child, a little insecure, but firm. She was carrying an envelope in her hands. Our eyes met. Time froze. For a moment, I couldn't get up. She crossed the street, and when she stopped in front of me, all she said was, "Hi, Mom." The voice was the same, more mature, more husky, but the intonation, the same as when she woke me up asking for pancakes. I cried. I cried without breathing. I cried for 20 years in 3 seconds. She hugged me, and in that moment, time existed again. But what she told me next was something I never would have imagined in 1,000 years. She looked me in the eyes for long seconds before she began to speak, and I saw there not only the woman my daughter had become, but also all the years that had been stolen from us. There was weariness in those features, a silent weight in each word that would come. We sat on the bench in the square like two strangers trying to sew a bond lost in time. Clara held the envelope between her fingers, squeezing it slightly, as if she still doubted that she had made the right choice in seeking me out. "Do you want to hear it all now?" she asked, her voice low, almost fearing her own answer. "I do," I replied without hesitation. "Whatever it is." She took a deep breath. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. And then she began. "That day, the day I disappeared, someone took me." The words pierced me like an arrow. My body tensed. My breath caught. They took her. I knew. I always knew. But I was afraid to believe it. He showed up at the gate saying that you had sent for me, that you had had an accident and were in the hospital. I didn't doubt him. He knew my name, our dog's name, even the color of my favorite pajamas. She paused for a moment and looked at me, as if waiting for some confirmation that I understood what was coming next. "I got in the car," she continued, "thinking I was going to see you. But he never took me to the hospital. He took me to another state, to a secluded house, and for years, he made me believe that no one was looking for me, that you were dead, that I was unwanted. My body lost its strength. I felt as if the ground had shattered into 1,000 pieces beneath my feet. He told me that you had abandoned me, that my father hated me, that no one wanted me. And I was just a child, Mom. I believed him. The pain that went through me at that moment was indescribable. I felt like a failed mother, powerless, defeated. The worst kind of pain is the one where you couldn't even fight. He kept me locked up for months," Clara continued. "Then, when I realized I couldn't escape, I learned to pretend, to obey. I became the daughter he wanted. I did what he asked of me. I grew up in silence, angry, ashamed, until one day, he died. A heart attack." She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "When it happened, I was 19. I didn't know how to use a cell phone. I didn't know who to trust, but I knew I needed to figure out who I was." She opened the envelope she was carrying and took out a folded photo. It was the two of us, in front of the sea, when she was about 7 years old. I was holding an ice cream and she was hugging me, her face covered in sand. I found this photo hidden among his books, and behind it was his full name and his old address. She handed the photo to me. I held it as if it were a piece of time that had begun to breathe again. It took me years to decide whether to seek you out. Part of me hated you, thought that maybe what he said was true. But deep down, I felt it. I felt that something was wrong. I couldn't speak. Words failed me. Tears flowed without me controlling them. I saw you, Mom. Before I left the first note, I walked over to your work. I watched you from across the street, and you were still wearing the same polka dot shirt you wore when we made pancakes. She smiled, shyly, and that smile was the same one that made me recognize my daughter at that moment. I needed to know if you had moved on, if you were happy, and I realized that you weren't, that you also carried something broken inside you. I never stopped looking for you, I managed to say, my voice cracking. Never. Not even a day. She came closer and took my hand. Her hands were cold, but firm. I know, and that's why I'm here. We remained silent. People passed by. Children played. The world around us seemed to go on without knowing that two lives were trying to come together there. I have a daughter, Clara said suddenly. My eyes widened. She is 5 years old. Her name is Lucia. Lucia, in honor of you. Lucia is your second mother, right? I nodded, crying. I don't want her to grow up with silence. I want her to know the truth. I want her to know you. My breath caught. My heart felt like a child running wild inside my chest. Are you telling me that I'm a grandmother? She smiled. I'm saying we can start over, if you want. I hugged her. There were no more words. They weren't needed. But when she took me to the car to introduce me to Lucia, there was something strange. The car was empty. She was here. I swear she was here. Clara began running across the parking lot, calling her daughter's name. And in that instant, my blood ran cold. Clara, the note in the car. She looked at me, and then she saw it. On the passenger seat was an envelope. The handwriting was the same as the one she used on her childhood notes, but it wasn't hers. And what was written inside, it would change everything. Clara stood frozen in front of the envelope. Her hands were shaking, her eyes darting from the handwriting on the paper to me, as if searching for an explanation that neither of us had. I approached slowly, feeling the weight of déjà vu descend upon me like an ancient storm returning to its birthplace. The paper was the same as the one I had received at my doorstep. Same type, same handwriting, but Clara hadn't written it, and neither had I. She finally took the envelope, swallowed hard, and carefully opened it. Inside was a single sentence. Now you understand what it's like to lose someone you love. It wasn't meant to come back. The air left our lungs at the same time. I stared at her, hoping this was some kind of cruel joke, something that would make sense after some explanation. But the desperation in her eyes was real. This can't be happening again, she whispered, pacing in circles, looking around. She was here. She was sitting, with her seatbelt buckled. I only stepped away for a few seconds. The pain I felt at that moment was twofold. First, as a mother. Then, as a grandmother. It was as if life had reopened a wound that had not even begun to heal. Clara, I tried to say, searching for my voice in the midst of my panic. We need to call the police, now. No, she replied immediately, her eyes glazed over. The police won't understand. They never do. But she's a child. They'll say it was negligence. They'll question me. They'll question you. They'll treat it like a common disappearance. And it's not. This is personal. She pointed at the note, her eyes blazing. This person knew me. He knew you. And he's watching us. But who? Who would do this to you? Clara took a while to respond. She looked up at the sky as if searching for courage among the clouds. Before he died, that man who held me captive, he spoke of someone, a partner, a woman. Like this? I thought it was just a delusion. He said she was always around, that she was the one who watched him when he went out, that she was the one who chose me. A chill ran down my spine. Do you think this woman is still alive? I don't know, but someone wants the pain to happen again. They want to punish me, or punish us. I finished, feeling my throat close up. We stood there for endless minutes. The parking lot was open. The cameras were all over the place. But we knew what the police bureaucracy would do. File a report, wait for hours, Consider it an escape or parental kidnapping. Time wasted. Time that cost the lives of so many other mothers. Clara took out her cell phone with trembling hands and began to show photos. That's her, Lucia, 5 years old, brown hair, green eyes. She was wearing a yellow dress today, with flowers on it, and her teddy bear, an old one, with only one eye. She never lets go of that bear. I picked up the phone. The image of the little girl on the screen made my heart ache in a way it had never done before. It was like seeing Clara as a little girl again. The same look in her eyes. The same expression she had when she asked me for one more bedtime story. "We will find her," I said, with the firmness of someone who knows he cannot fail. "I swear I will not lose another daughter." We went to the police station. We reported everything. But as Clara had predicted, they looked at us with skepticism. They gave us a protocol and asked us to wait 48 hours. They suggested that it was just a mishap, a prank. A responsible adult should wait, they said. But we knew. That child did not leave alone. When we returned home, we found the door ajar. Clara pulled me back, alert. We entered slowly. The interior was intact, but on the table was something new, a small box. Clara opened it carefully. Inside, Lucia's teddy bear. She screamed, a sharp sound that shattered the air like shattered glass. And underneath the toy, another note. "You didn't protect her. Now you'll see how you feel." Clara's hands covered her face. I hugged her tightly, feeling her pain, trying to be firm, trying to be a mother for the second time. That's when I noticed something on the note. The handwriting was identical to the other two, but there was one detail, one small detail that made me freeze. The way the E was written, crooked, with the lower leg elongated. That was my handwriting. I would recognize her anywhere. Clara looked at me, trying to understand why I was silent. "Mother?" I couldn't answer right away. "That note was written by me." She stared at me, confused. "Like this? Not now, but years ago, before you disappeared. I used to write like this. That E. What are you saying?" I walked away slowly, my heart pounding. I went to the old closet in the hallway. I pulled out an old box of notebooks. One of them, an old diary, had the same handwriting, the same elongated E. Clara looked on, pale. "Mom, you're scaring me." I didn't write it, but someone learned from what I left behind. Who? It was then that I remembered. From someone who lived with me, who copied everything I did. Someone I hadn't seen in over 25 years. My sister. Clara was speechless. Your aunt. She never got over losing her son. And she blamed me. I hadn't spoken my sister's name in over 2 decades. Not out of hatred, but out of pain. She disappeared from my life shortly after we buried an empty casket. A symbolic casket, with a blue embroidered blanket and a pair of white shoes she had knitted herself. It was the burial of her son, the baby who never breathed, the baby who took with her the rest of the woman I once called my best friend. His name was Elijah, and her name, Helena. Helena was 3 years older than me, and since she was little, we had an almost telepathic connection. She defended me from teasing, taught me how to braid my hair, and told me bedtime stories when our mother worked nights. But everything changed when she got pregnant. It was a forbidden love. An older married man who promised the world and disappeared as soon as she told him the news. Helena carried the pregnancy in silence, almost as an act of penance. I was by her side the whole time, or I thought I was. Deep down, she was alone, drowning in a pain that no one saw, and that I only realized too late. During the birth, there was a complication. The baby was stillborn, and with it, Helena's hope for life died. For weeks, she didn't say a word, and when she finally did start talking again, she wasn't the same. She looked at me with cold, distant eyes, as if I somehow had something to do with the tragedy. "You were lucky," she once told me, watching Clara play on the living room rug. "You have everything I lost." I tried to comfort her, to offer help, love, care, but she kept getting further and further away. And then one day, She just disappeared. She left a note saying she needed to find peace. She never responded to messages again. She never showed up again. And now, 23 years later, I had the impression that Helena had returned. Clara, I said quietly, if my intuition is right, we're not just dealing with someone who's sick. We're dealing with someone who's hurt, someone who wants to make me feel what she felt. She looked at me, trying to process. Do you think she took Lucia? Out of revenge? I don't know, but everything is very personal. The notes, the phrases, the way everything repeats itself. And why now? Why after so long? Because now she knows that the wound can be passed on to another generation. That taking you away from me was a blow. But taking Lucia away from me is like erasing everything. Clara stood up and started walking in circles. She was restless, breathing deeply. If it's her, why doesn't she show up? Why hide behind notes? Because she wants us to relive the anguish. She wants control. She wants to see us begging, bleeding for answers. Clara then looked at me firmly. Then we'll play her way. Like this? We will answer the notes. She took paper and pen and wrote a few words. You took me away twice, but I'm still here. Where do you want me to go? We put the paper in the same box where she had left the bear. We left it on the table, and we left. We went to the car and waited. Hours. Night fell. The neighborhood fell silent. The streetlights cast shadows across the sidewalk. Then, around midnight, a silhouette appeared on the corner. It was a woman, wearing a hood, with slow steps. She approached the house. She entered without hesitation. Clara held my hand tightly. I was barely breathing. 20 minutes passed, and then she left. He didn't look to the sides. He didn't run. He walked to the end of the street and disappeared. We went back inside. The box was still on the table, but now there was a new note and a photograph. It was an old image. Clara, little, sleeping on the couch. And in the background, me, sleeping in the armchair. But who took that photo? It wasn't us. Clara held the photograph with trembling hands, as if it were a cursed fragment of the past. I couldn't take my eyes off the image. The yellowed paper, the grain of the shadows, the slightly tilted angle. Everything told me that the photo had been taken secretly, from outside the room, by someone watching us unseen. And at that moment, something inside me gave way. She was here, I murmured. Inside our house. For years. Clara looked at me, her face pale. You mean, during my childhood? Yes. But why? Why photograph and keep it for so long? Because she wasn't just watching us. She was building a narrative, an obsession. Clara turned the photo over, looking for something. On the back, in red pen, a date, 4/11/2005. That day, she said thoughtfully, was when I had a high fever and you slept in the armchair to watch over me all night. I remembered. Clara was sweating and crying, and I sang her to sleep. Helena must have been there, seeing it all, recording it, feeding her pain, creating her own world where she was the spectator of the life she lost. We went to Clara's room, now converted into an office with boxes of memories. We rummaged through drawers, albums, notebooks. Something inside me told me that the answer was there, buried along with everything we had left behind. That's when Clara found an old book of fairy tales. The cover was faded blue, with stains of tape. It was her favorite. And between the pages, there was a brown envelope, glued together with thick tape. That wasn't mine, said Clara. We opened it slowly. Inside was a cassette tape, and a handwritten label, "Listen Alone." Clara looked at me. It was for me. She picked up an old stereo that she had kept out of nostalgia. She put in the tape. The sound of the tape spinning filled the room with an anxious silence. And then, the voice. "Hello, Clarinha. If you are listening to this, it is because time has finally brought us closer together." Clara shuddered. "I watched you grow. I watched you sleep, play, cry. I watched your mother hug you like I once dreamed of doing with my own son. But he was taken from me, and all that was left in me was emptiness. an emptiness that you filled with your presence, without even knowing it. You were my little stolen star. And now, I just want you to see what it's like to have something ripped away from you too. The tape continued. Clara stopped it with her freezing hands. This isn't just revenge, Mom. It's sickness. It's obsession. She raised me without touching me. She lived in my shadow. And now, she's doing the same with Lucia. We need to understand where she is. And fast. It was then that a memory came to me. Clara, do you remember that country house where we spent our summers? Grandma's. Yes. When Helena ran away, no one else went there. It was far away, isolated, and she had a room that she loved. Do you think she's there? It's the only place that would make sense. Without wasting any time, we gathered what we needed. Clara took Lucia's picture, a coat and a flashlight. The house was almost 2 hours away, at the end of a dirt road forgotten by time. We arrived at night. The sky was covered in heavy clouds. The tires screeched on rocks. The house at the top of the hill looked abandoned. But when we turned off the car, we saw a faint light coming from the back. Clara squeezed my hand. If she's there, we'll get Lucia out of there, whatever the cost. We approached in silence, each step swallowed by the mud of the path. The back door was ajar. The smell in the air was a mixture of mold, damp wood, and something else. Lavender. Clara's eyes widened. Lucia's soap has that smell. We went in. The house was dark, but the light from the back came from a hallway. We walked towards it until we reached the old sewing room. And there, on a rocking chair, was the bear. The same bear as Lucia. But there was no one. No sign of the girl. No sign of Helena. Just a mirror leaning against the wall. And written in red lipstick on the glass, "She still sleeps. But when she wakes up, she will have to choose who will leave forever." Behind us, a crack. Someone closed the door. The sound of the door closing behind us was sharp, firm, decisive. Clara turned around and ran to try to open it, but it was already locked. I walked slowly to the mirror, still absorbing the phrase written in lipstick. She still sleeps. But when she wakes up, she will have to choose who will leave forever. Each word seemed to weigh a ton. The reflection in the mirror showed my aged face, and Clara's behind me, tense, her eyes scanning the room. There was something different about the room. It was too clean, as if someone had been taking care of the place for a long time, as if it were a stage. "She's here, somewhere in this house," I murmured. "Let's go look," Clara said, already heading towards the side corridor that led to the bedrooms. "I'll call her. You look at the rooms." We began to walk with careful steps. The floorboards creaked beneath our feet. Each door we pushed was like a heart test. Empty bathrooms, closets full of old clothes. Until, as we opened the last door in the hallway, time froze. There, lying on a bed covered with a white sheet, was Lucia. Tiny, inert. Clara ran over and fell to her knees beside her daughter, touching her face with trembling fingers. I walked in next, my heart racing. "She's breathing," Clara said, relieved. "She's drugged, but alive." The relief was immediate, but the fear did not go away, because we knew that Helena was still there, watching, waiting. It was then that we heard a voice behind us, faint, fragile, almost ghostly. "She's beautiful, Clarinia. She looks like you." Helena stood in the doorway. Her white hair was tied in a messy bun. Her skin was pale. Her eyes were sunken, but still alive, and filled with a pain that had not faded with time. Clara stood up slowly. She looked at her with a firmness that sent shivers down my spine. "Why?" he asked, his voice low. "Why did you make us relive this?" Helena smiled bitterly. "Because the world never gave me anything back. Because everyone moved on. Because you had everything. A mother, affection, a daughter. And I had an emptiness." She took a step forward. I placed myself between them. "You chose to walk away, Helena. We were there. I searched for you for years. You had Clara," she screamed, finally letting her anger escape. "You had a daughter. I had an empty coffin. And yet, you were the one everyone consoled. You. And she grew up calling me Aunt, without even remembering who I was. Clara took a deep breath. I may not have known you, but today I know everything. And if you saw me as a daughter, as you say, you wouldn't have done this to my daughter. Helena lowered her eyes. She remained silent for long seconds. You don't understand. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I just wanted her to understand what it's like to lose. Clara approached. I understand. But what you're doing won't bring your son back. And it won't erase the love I can still build with my daughter, with my mother. The pain you carry, it needs to come out in another way. Because what you've been doing, Helena, is becoming exactly what destroyed you. Tears streamed down Helena's face. The first time we had seen her cry. I don't know how to go back. Then let us help you, Clara said, extending her hand. But start now. Let Lucia go out with us. Let the story end here. Today. Helena stood still for a few seconds. And then, very slowly, she nodded. We left the house with Lucia in our arms, still asleep. Helena stood at the door, watching in silence, like a shadow from the past accepting to be dissolved by the morning that was finally dawning. We took Lucia to the hospital. She woke up the next day, confused but healthy. And when she opened her eyes and saw Clara, she called out to her in a weak voice, "Mommy?" It was the most beautiful sound I have ever heard in my life. In the days that followed, Clara and I rebuilt the house from the inside. Not the walls, but our story. She lived with me for a while, until she found her own space. Lucia now runs around the yard with the same joy that Clara once had. And every day, as I make pancakes, I remember what time almost took from us. Helena was voluntarily admitted to a psychiatric clinic. She writes letters. Letters that Clara, over time, began to answer. No wound heals overnight. But today we know. To love is also to remain. And to forgive is to move on, even when no one has taught us how. Life took my daughter from me once, but she came back. And she brought me, along with her own daughter, the chance to be a mother again. This time, whole, and nothing. Not the past, not the pain, not the ghosts, can take that away from me. End.